This is a message to all of you liberal Democrats, gun grabbing wackos, and anybody else who is against liberty. Also including you Republicans in name only, you rhinos, you weak sauce GOPers who would have us give up our constitutional rights for a little bit of perceived safety. You guys have been lied to. You've become the definition of the term useful idiots. You have been convinced by con artists that gun control will make you safer. To think that we could prevent murder if everybody gave up their guns is just an asinine concept. You guys have been sold a bill of goods. And what you're doing is you're forcing everybody to sacrifice our children, our school children, in your gun-free zones. We're sacrificing them to a failed ideology. It was Benjamin Franklin that said, those who would give up essential liberty for temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Ben Franklin said that, and if you guys, do you guys really think you're smarter than Ben Franklin? I mean, this is the guy that discovered electricity with his lightning kites. He invented the stove. He invented fire departments, blogging, and libraries. What have you guys come up with? Gun-free zones, a place where you create a shooting gallery for anybody with evil or psychotic intentions. Here's the truth. Gun-free zones are dangerous. If you look at the history of the gun-free zone, and it's very easy to do, you can just do a quick Google search, and you'll find that all of these mass shootings have occurred in gun-free zones. The idea that you're going to be safer in this area with no protection is just ludicrous. You guys are a bunch of sheep saying, we are afraid of wolves, so we're going to get rid of all of the sheepdogs. That's not how you do it. Even in places where you think there were guns, such as the Fort Hood shootings, carried out by a madman terrorist. He shot up a cafeteria full of soldiers because those soldiers were all unarmed according to policy. It created a gun-free zone. And it took somebody with a gun to come in and end the rampage. And it always comes to that. Either the shooter himself, and let's not use the term the shooter, because I'm a shooter, all of my friends are shooters, but we're not mass murdering psychopaths. So let's try to let's try to use that term a little bit more correctly. The mass murdering psychopaths, they look for these gun-free zones as a place to carry out their acts. And it always comes to an end. Either the psychopath or somebody else ends the rampage. And that person that ends the rampage does so with a gun. Let's take a look at here in Utah. We had the Trolley Square shooting. The Trolley Square shooting was carried out in a gun-free zone. Trolley Square is a small mall just outside of downtown Salt Lake City. The shooter goes in, starts lighting the place up, and it was somebody with a concealed carry permit that ended that shooting. He just happened to be an off-duty officer from Ogden. He was out of his jurisdiction. He was enjoying an evening with the family, carrying his weapon, and because he could do that in what was a gun-free zone, because he was a law enforcement officer, he could carry his concealed weapon. But it was him he's the one that stopped the rampage. Far more people could have been killed there. There was another incident at another mall where the psychopath was rampaging. A person with a concealed carry permit a concealed carry weapon, pulled out his gun, aimed at the shooter, but he didn't have a shot because of innocent bystanders behind the target, behind the psychopath. But the psychopath saw him and knew that his rampage was at an end, and thus turned his own gun on himself. But still, it was when armed resistance was met, these psychopaths, their rampages come to an end. They don't have, they're cowards. They don't have a warrior spirit. They're not fighting. They're just killing innocent people. Your gun-free zones, you idiot liberals, are putting thousands and thousands of people at risk every day. This is not tolerable. And to blame the gun, to blame an inanimate object is, again, asinine. Let's look at some of the biggest disasters of mass murder. 9/11 was committed with box cutters. Timothy McVeigh, fertilizer and diesel fuel. You don't have to have a gun to create a mass murdering situation like this. What it takes is evil intent, psychotic intent. It takes mental illness combined with an evil will to carry out these acts. And really, the mental illness is the problem, because it could be said that to do these acts, one would have to be mentally ill. But here in the United States, mental illness is not an issue that we like to talk about. We're uncomfortable with it. Our society basically shuns the mentally ill issue because of our past. We used to have mental health hospitals. These were all generally, universally, pretty horrible places and poorly run. But we still had places for the mentally ill to go, where people could go and be treated and kept away from the rest of society as needed. Not everybody was, incarcerated in the hospital, and I'm not saying that we need to go back and do that, but we need to look at how we treat our mentally ill. If somebody has been making threats, if they're deemed mentally ill, if somebody has got these serious issues, we need a place for them. We need to make sure that these people are going to be safe and make sure that they're not a danger to society. But we don't do that in America. Instead, what we do is we give them pills and send them home. Well, that might be fine and well for some cases, some forms of mental illness. But what they do not need to do is they do not need to be ignored. They need, they can't be just left alone to their own devices. It's not right. And we have people like this that murdered, in this case here in Connecticut, this mentally ill person with evil intent murdered his mom, stole her guns, and went on his rampage. It is a tragedy, and it's a horrible tragedy. And it makes me physically sick to think of it. But again, this happened in a gun-free zone. That's the key, the gun-free zone. We need to get rid of these. The shooting that happened at the theater in Colorado, at the Batman movie, that mentally ill person, that psychopath, passed a theater that was closer, and he could have gone to a bigger theater with even more targets of opportunity, but he didn't go to that because those places were not gun-free zones. Instead, he specifically targeted and went to the theater that was posted to be a gun-free zone. You're inviting, if you have a gun-free zone that you're managing, you are inviting this sort of tragedy to happen at your location. You can't keep the wolves at bay by posting a sign. all you're doing is keeping the sheepdogs away, the people who would protect you. And I'm talking about honest, good citizens who've passed background checks, who've taken the training classes, and are legally allowed to carry arms. They carry a concealed handgun. You would never know who has them. And that's the deterrent. That is why gun-free zones are dangerous, and every other places are a lot safer, because in other places you have people who are packing guns concealed legally, good, upstanding citizens, and the bad guys don't know who has a gun and who doesn't. Because let me tell you, I work at a gun counter and I sell guns. I'm also a firearms trainer and I teach people. And I've taught and sold guns to people from all walks of life. People who were less affluent financially, people who are very rich. I've taught professionals in legal fields, medical fields, every field you can think of. I've taught professors and scientists. I've sold guns to radio personalities, celebrities. I've sold guns to people from every walk of life. Black people, white people, Asian people, people from all sorts of ethnic backgrounds. Do people say, that this is a problem, that we have a problem with the gun culture? It's not the gun culture. It's the American culture. Gun owners are Americans. There is a gun made every 10 seconds in the United States, in the world. The United States has probably over 100 million gun owners. And out of all those 100 million gun owners, we're not going out killing people every day, because we are legally justified, we're legally allowed to own guns. When you buy a gun, you have to fill out the ATF form 4473, and a background check is conducted. And if you pass that background check, there's nothing on their background, there's nothing on your record saying that you should not have a gun, well then by all means you can have a gun. If you guys want to stop violence and stop tragedies, you can't look at banning guns. It's not going to do it. It's not going to work. All you're going to do is create a bigger problem. Because look at this. You're wanting a prohibition on firearms. That has worked out so great. On everything else we've put prohibitions on, hasn't it? Let's look at the history. The first big prohibition in the United States was the prohibition against alcohol. The result of that was, people continued to drink. They went underground where it wasn't regulated. There's a big black market for alcohol. And a crime organization rose up to control that black market. And as a result, we got the mafia. And that worked out great, especially if you're a union leader, especially if you like those political kickbacks because you're a shady bastard politician. That probably worked out great for you. Or if you live in Las Vegas, these are places that basically been the domain, the early domain of the mafia. The mafia created Las Vegas. The mafia basically created all these labor unions, and that worked out great, didn't it? Now, we also had the prohibition against drugs. Oh, we can't use drugs. You can't smoke a joint of marijuana in the privacy of your own home and eat nachos and watch Farscape. That would be bad. So, with this prohibition against drugs, we've created, people are still going to use drugs, so we've created a black market for drugs. And there was a crime syndicate called the cartels that basically rose up to control that market. As a result, we have cartels that have gone from the growing fields in Central and South America through Mexico. They've taken on Mexico's government head-to-head. They've taken on the federales in raging gun battles, going at them head-to-head. And they've basically took over Mexico, and now they're coming into their southern border states and are causing lots of problems. These cartels are very dangerous. And the reason why they are very dangerous is because we've had a drug prohibition. Now, what do you geniuses, what do you guys think is going to happen if we have a firearms prohibition? Let's follow the pattern. It's an established pattern. You're going to create a black market. You're going to create a syndicate that's going to control that black market. And the problem is going to get out of control and worse than it has ever been before, because you guys have to sacrifice the lives of innocent people with your asinine idea that gun control is going to help anything. Let's look at places that have had gun control, sweeping gun control. Japan, violent crime has gone through the roof. Australia, violent crime has gone through the roof. England, violent crime has gone through the roof. So instead of getting shot, you're going to get beat to death with a cricket bat. You know what? Your choice. I'd rather get shot. Actually, no. I'd rather shoot the guy with the cricket bat that's trying to harm me and my family. Because self-defense is a human right. It's not a right given to us by the government. It's an inalienable right. It's like the right to breathe oxygen. We have a right to do that. Nobody can charge us for oxygen. Yet. Let's give the Obama administration a little bit more time, and they'll probably find a way to tax and regulate that. And then oxygen will be ineffective and useless, and it'd just be horrible. Anyway, because the administration just ruins everything. They'd even ruin oxygen. But gun control doesn't work. Gun-free zones don't work. When are you guys going to get it that you've got to open it up? The solution to this, and there is a good solution to this, is to put people in the way of the bad guys. You know, we have cops. Unfortunately, we have to call cops. Cops have to travel to respond, and usually they get there too late. You know, if somebody's got a weapon and they're going to go crazy, they're going to, you know, it's going to take 2 or 3 minutes for that cop to get there, at best. One statistic was that in gun-free zones where there's no armed resistance, the number's like 13 people killed on average. On average, where there are a concealed carry holder, the average number of people killed are like 2. There's a big difference there. The difference is you've got people, good guys, that are armed and are able to put a stop to it. In our schools, we need to look at an example that works. Israel is a very good example at work. They have armed teachers. Now, I'm not saying that we have to arm all of our teachers, but those teachers that are willing to take the training and are willing to stand up, let them. That's all you have to do. It won't cost the state. It won't cost the feds. It won't cost the school districts. It won't cost anybody any money, because probably those teachers already have a concealed carry permit and they already have a concealed carryable gun. All you have to do is let them carry concealed in the school. Let them defend your kids. We can't educate our kids if we can't defend them, if we can't keep them safe. You know, people say, oh, you know, if you have guns in school, the guns are going to get, you know, they're going to get in the hands of kids, and, you know, it's going to be a horrible thing. Well, you know, look in China. They don't have any guns in China. And about the same time that this happened in Connecticut, there was an incident in China where a guy slashed 22 school kids with a knife. He went on a spree and started hacking at people. There was an incident at a Smith's grocery store in Salt Lake City, where a guy went into Smith's, bought a knife, and comes out into the street area, the parking lot, and starts stabbing people. You know, you're going to find these nutters everywhere, and it takes somebody willing to stand up and confront them. And the best way to do that is to confront them from a position of strength, to be armed, to protect your students. I believe it's a moral obligation that a parent protects his children, that a teacher protects their students. And they can't do that if they're unarmed. You can't face a psychopath with a gun and expect to stop them if you don't have a gun. Well, there's lots of things that you can do to fight them, but your odds are definitely in your favor if you are armed. And all these school districts have to do, all the state has to do is say, yes, in our school it's okay for teachers to be armed. Get rid of the gun-free zones, and you're going to get rid of these slaughter fests. Simple as that.